that the world needs to hear, which is it's time to build community. I think we're living in a day and age where, we've never been more divided. And we as leaders in the real estate industry must step up and must rebuild community, must rebuild unity. And I have just the person to teach us all about building community. I'm going to introduce him here in just a second. Let me remind you that inside of the Think Bigger Real Estate group on Facebook, I take snippets, the very best snippets of these long form interviews, and put them there so that you can apply them. So you better believe you're going to hear some nuggets from Tristan Ahumada. And that's exactly who we have on the show today. He had founded the largest online real estate community, which is Lab Coat Agents. You're like, oh, Lab Coat Agents? I knew I saw that. Like I knew that guy from somewhere. So Tristan, it's such a pleasure to have you here, man. Thank you for coming onto the Think Bigger Real Estate show.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm excited.
Yeah, me too. You are a big thinker, and it's really fun to spend some time with you. So before we get into our topic today, our promised topic of building community, which you've done so expertly well, let's just tell us a little bit about your story. How long have you been in real estate, and what caused you to want to go from just marketing and selling homes to really starting to build community, to think bigger? How did that all begin?
Great question, man. So it started back in 2011, 2012. I've been in real estate since 2004, but my journey into this whole world was purchasing online leads, believe it or not. I during the whole economy collapse of 08, 09, all of that, I was door knocking, cold calling, doing all that good stuff. And all of a sudden it didn't work. And I was like, okay, what do we do now? So I started looking into Craigslist. I started looking into Google PPC, pay-per-click. And I'm like, okay, this is working really well. And so the better I got at that, I created these systems for online leads coming through, and I started scaling based off of that. And I thought, this is really cool. And then one day I got a call from realtor.com. It was early 2012. And they said, hey, we've got this product. And as soon as they finished telling me, I was like, hey, that sounds like what I do with Craigslist and Google. I'm like, this is pretty cool. I go, I'll take the whole county. And they're like, what? And I'm like, well, I understand what you're doing. And so I took the whole county, and then within a couple of days, I'm like, oh, wow, what the heck did I do? This is a lot more than I can handle. And so that started this whole snowball effect as to me trying this new thing that at the time nobody had tested out. And so I had to create these systems and tech that pieced together all these incoming leads from realtor.com. And then realtor.com took notice, and they said, hey, Tristan, you're doing such a great job. We see everything. We talk to you. Can you jump on camera and tell us what you do so we can kind of share it with everybody? And I said, yeah, not a problem. And then that's when I learned that they were in the same building that I was in. I had no clue.
Funny.
So I literally opened the door, went outside, and went to the next door because the walls are connected, but not the doors. So I go in and I'm like, this is insane. I had no idea that you guys were literally next door for years. And I go in, sit down, they put a camera on, and I tell them exactly the process that I do. They send it over to the execs once it's done. It's like, who is this guy? We want him to speak for us at NAR in San Francisco. And so I get a call saying, hey, can you speak in San Francisco for us in 3 weeks? And I'm like, sure, but I have one condition. Can you fly me and my family to San Francisco? Because I'd like to go with my family. And they said, yeah, no problem. And then that is what started the process, because as soon as that happened, I turned over to my wife when we were heading to San Francisco, our first trip, and I go, hey, this is really cool, and I can see where this is heading, but I don't think this is going to last a very long time, because they're always trying to see what's next, right? I'm the cool thing right now. And she's right. So we thought about it a little bit more, and then she said, why don't you create a Facebook community so you can teach people what you're teaching them already? And I thought, that's the dumbest idea I've ever heard. I'm not even on Facebook. And so I created a Facebook group, man. And that's where it started. It was my wife's idea. I wanted to do a blog, but thank God I listened to my wife.
Yeah, boy, what a couple powerful lessons that stand out for me. Number one is a promise I'm going to make to everybody listening today is that these principles of building community are not going to just help your business. They're actually also going to help benefit your family. The fact that you, Tristan, made it conditional that I'm bringing my family with me shows how important your community of family is to you. I'm kind of an ambitious guy when it comes to family. I'm married. My wife and I have 6 kids, and we're homeschooling all of them right now. That wasn't our choice necessarily, but I will say that building community at home has become more important than ever before. And so I love that about you. I love how you shared that. Again, we have, I think another key principle that you I don't know, purposely or inadvertently shared is that community always begins when somebody chooses to step up and give away value and knowledge for free, right? Without expectation of getting anything in return. It's like, look, you want to know my secrets? You bet. Here's what I got, right? And that doesn't mean, I think, forever that you can't ever charge anything or offer a product, but what it does say is that I'm going to give away so much value that you're going to, it's always going to be lopsided. I'm always going to be giving more than I'm asking for. Any other thoughts from you on that?
Well, I think that I think is where it stems from, because so many times I talk to people at different levels, right? And they're like, well, we want to start a community. And now I get to consult companies outside of real estate. So they're like, we want to start a community. What do we do? Right.
That's cool.
So now that I've reverse engineer it, I think the first question that you shouldn't ask is, when do I get paid? That's probably the last question you should ask. And if you look at these big companies too, it's the same process. I mean, look at when Zillow started making money finally, right? I mean, Redfin, no. And so you look at these massive companies and they're saying, well, how can we drive this and continually use that money to grow? And what value can we start giving people, right? Because be prepared to not make any money at the beginning. And if that's the first inclination that you have, I suggest that you change it or maybe look at doing something else, because this takes a lot of passion. It takes a lot of time, and a lot of it is going to be for free until you grow so massive that people start paying attention and saying, well, here's my money. I don't know what I'm buying, but I want to buy something for you. Here's my money. And that's when you're like, okay, I've got something here. Yeah. Let's create something even more valuable.
I love that. It is very true, isn't it? You look at the most successful companies in the world, and they work without a profit for a long period of time, building a great name, a great following, a great list, if you will, of people that are just receiving value. Then it becomes really natural when it comes time for them to offer something. And I want to say something else here to anybody that's listening, wondering how this might apply to them, because I'm not recommending or even suggesting in any way that you need to go build your own, try and be lab coat agents. There will never be another lab coat agents. They've created something very, very special there. I think the direct application for everybody here is what are the communities that I can serve? What's the community that I can build? I actually have a practice of hosting top agent masterminds. So I'll bring in some of the top agents from our area and learn from them. And there was an agent who talked about how she had built a Facebook community for her sphere. And she talked about what she did to bring engagement and value into that, into that Facebook community. And at first, when she was trying to get people to engage, people would make a comment and she'd deliver a bag of candy saying, thank you, that means so much to me. And now it's turned into this whole organism that lives without her, but she's at the center of it. And it's there's some really powerful principles that I think people can get from you, Tristan. And that's kind of what I want to dig into, is whether you're looking at building a Facebook community or just a community for your sphere, whether it's, in your town, whether it's just, I want to do good and kind of help reunite the people in my area, post a pretty divisive, election series, whatever it may be for you. I think there's a lot of takeaways that we're going to get into. So Tristan, talk to us a little bit about this concept. Once you start giving away stuff for free in a community, right? Whether it be in your town where you're sponsoring baseball teams or whatever, right? And organizing community events for your business, or whether it be you're in a Facebook group and you're offering free value. How do you get, what's the next step? How do you get other people to start to contribute? I have a Facebook group, but that's been one of the challenges, is I'm kind of the publisher and everyone else is kind of the listener. And I don't want it to be that way, right? What have you guys done to really empower people to stand up and say, look, this isn't just Tristan's community. This isn't just where he shares stuff. This is where I share stuff.
Yeah. And I think that comes to play maybe a step before, when you're looking at the community that you have to think, well, why did I build this? What's the passion behind it? Right. And then you start to define, if you're like first step, the step would be, well, let's figure this out. What is this community going to be about? Is it a special interest type of community where we're going to be talking about cats or kayaks, right? Well, what is this? Or is it going to be a community type event, where a community type group where it's about the city or the county or where you live, right? Or is it going to be a business group? And my favorite business one is Peloton. They're pretty amazing. If you jump in there, you see like, whoa, this is pretty cool. Everybody's contributing. There's also a few Tesla ones that are awesome. And then you have the other type, which is like lab coat agents. It's just a group of people that have the same beliefs and standards. But in all of these, the key to it is to be able to set the tone initially and bring a team that can do the same thing. That's where a lot of the community building falls apart, because we think that it's got to be done by ourselves, right? And we're the ones who have to lead the way in it. And it is the case at the beginning. But if you get a good team together, like I just built another community called Drunk on Social. You don't get drunk though. It's just, you're all in on social is what I mean, right? And I brought in Jeff Fitzer. I brought in a few other key people, and our moderators are now like 20 people in 2 days. But the thing is, sometimes you bring in these moderators and you have no guidelines. Like, what are the guidelines, right? And so that's where you have to be like, okay, everybody, let's create these simple guidelines. When you come in, it's a brand new community. You as a new moderator, you're going to bring in 10 people a day for the first 30 days, right? It used to be that you can bring in a ton of people, Justin, and now you can't. Facebook's, depending on who's bringing in how many people, it's blocked at about 10 or 15 a day. But if you bring in 20 moderators, right, and each one is bringing 10 in a day for 30 days, that's a lot. Right now, depending on what the community's about, that can or can't be done. Right, if it's about cats, that's a lot more open. Like, a lot of people like cats. But if it's about real estate and for real estate agents, you have to see who they are. Right, so that's part of it. Then the other guideline is, well, let's see, how many times are you going to be posting a day? How many times would we love for you to post a day, Justin? And it's probably 3, realistically, right? So post things that are happening in your business that you can share with others, that motivates other people to ask questions or answer, right? And if you want to do a Facebook Live in the community, go ahead and do it. We would love for you to do it once a week if possible. So 3, 2 of them can be static posts, just words or pictures. And then the other one can be a Facebook Live. And then finally, when you're looking through the community, because sometimes you're in there, do me a favor as a moderator. We don't want to leave any empty posts, or maybe you see one that only has 1 comment or like. Go ahead and tag me or tag one of the other moderators that you think can help out. And it gets more engagement going. So people know that when they're in the community, they get their answers.
They're being heard.
Right?
What a great idea. So you actually have brought in additional people to help moderate. And so I would encourage any, again, real estate agent out there. I think, one direct application is I could create a Facebook group for my clients. All right. This is going to be a hub, all things real estate for the people that I've served in real estate. And you could actually bring in, moderators, potentially, other, kind of vendor companies that you partner with. Could even be just some of your favorite, very social, kind of past clients, right? Kind of like the key referral people. What's the value proposition to them? Just being a part of a community. How do you encourage? Because it sounds like you're saying, look, I'm going to give you the opportunity to kind of to exist on this platform and to have a voice. And here's kind of the standards that we'd like you to keep.
So initially, it was
like.
Great question. So initially, it was a little challenging because nobody knew lab coat agents in the real estate world. It's like, well, why would I do this? Yeah. So I had to align myself with people that were thinking the same thing I was. Like, let's give back. And the cool thing that you'll notice is one of the 6 basic human needs is significance. And you see that so much with social media, especially in communities. And you're like, well, if I can find someone who really has this human need significance much higher than most people, they're going to thrive in here because that's what they love, right? When they post and people love it, they're going to feel amazing. And all of a sudden, all this rush of adrenaline, it's like, I love this thing, right? They'll also get a bit sad when nobody comments, right? Or likes. So you find people who love doing this. And second, once you start growing, or if you have a vision already for your community, like if you're going to start, Justin, if you're going to start a community for your past clients and sphere, it's easy to sell that to your agents. It's like, hey, we're going to get more business from this, right? The more we engage, we can blast out events, we can communicate with them. This is a no-brainer. But when it comes to a community that's a little larger, the only thing you can think of is, well, let's see, Justin, you're going to come in our community. The more you post, the more you comment, the more you engage, the more people see you, the more they'll go to you. And that perception of who Justin is will change. Now, all of a sudden, people will be reaching out to you directly to go and speak. They'll pay you to speak. Companies will come to you to ask for consulting. I mean, there's a few people on our moderators that have become influencers in the real estate world because of lab coat agents. And now they get paid quite a lot for what they're doing now, which is cool to see, right?
Cool. Yeah.
So, I mean, we have proof now for that. But at the beginning, I think you just align yourselves with people that really have this need to feel a significance and a desire to give back.
It actually reminds me, I'm actually just wrapping up a book right now. One of the things I've learned in research, I was sitting in the audience when Gary Keller announced that it was no longer going to be a training company, but it was going to be a technology company. Kind of took the world by storm, right? And he showed some statistics that I've actually since grabbed and kind of brought into my into my book, which is in 2008, the most valuable companies in the world were like natural resource companies, right? The oil companies of the world. Fast forward 10 years, and they're all data companies, right? It's the Apple, it's the Google, it's the Facebook, because you've got so much data on people. And it's data platform companies. In other words, other people have been able to come build something on that platform. Anyway, in the book, I tie it back to how agents should treat their database. But the point that I'm seeing here with you is the fact that when you build community, build it to the end that other people can build something great on top of what you've built, right?
Yeah.
Whether that be inside of your sphere, like database, right? That other people can potentially build kind of notoriety within all of your clients. Like, in the past, we talk a lot about kind of business mixers, and, that's awfully can be a bit tricky to do during pandemics, but you realize these people that have built communities of business savvy clients, they're having an ongoing business mixer, right? And these people are able to build their business through the platform that you've created. Now, you'll never maybe be at the level of like an Apple or a Facebook or a Google, but I think all of us would be well served by starting to think about our businesses as platform companies, just like you guys have done with Lab Coat Agents, where, hey, if somebody can come in here and add value to our community, and they can in the process build a great business on top of what we've built here, awesome, right? More power to them and to us.
Yeah, that's the key, man. And I mean, one of the things that I've done over the last couple of years after building this community is, first, I didn't know what the hell I was doing when I started. So I'm not going to lie to you. This just happened by chance because I was giving back, right? And it grew faster than I thought. And it grew without me knowing what I was doing. I just happened to be at the right time, doing the right things, and just meshed. And so now I look back and I'm like, okay, cool. Let's reverse engineer this, right? Let's see if we can rebuild what we've created. And so once I did that, I realized, I'm like, oh, these are all the steps. This is really cool. So we put it into play and we've recreated them. And now we have this blueprint that works. I'm like, this is pretty amazing.
From that blueprint, Tristan, what else could you share with us today that, like, when people go to build a community, what have we not talked about today that would be essential for people to build something great?
I've got a whole outline for this that's about 10 pages long.
Wow.
With details on outlining community growth, because I don't see communities just being in Facebook, right? Well, this is like the first evolution of online communities, or maybe the second, right? And then it's going to outgrow Facebook. And what happens next? Where do those communities go, right? So I think what we're not looking at when we're looking at communities is saying, well, what happens after this? And so when you start looking at that and you start looking at your community, because most communities are on Facebook right now, well, what information can I get right now so that once Facebook dies out, or is there's a next evolution of this, I can keep my community growing because it's a brand, right? And so now that you've created a brand, you're like, well, it's important, I guess, for me to have data like emails, right? And information. So when people join your community, whatever community that is, look to gather information before they join, right? And ask them to, if it's okay for you to deliver a newsletter weekly or bi-weekly or whatever you want, right? Then on top of that, you're going to be able to drive more traffic to wherever you want, whether it's YouTube, Instagram, or Facebook, or wherever you want to drive that traffic to. But if you're only relying on one place for that community to grow, it's a danger for when things change. And so I'm telling you right now, it's important to gather as much data as you can, emails, phone numbers, locations of where people are. And if you're looking at a community that's more localized for real estate or for any business, I'm saying, all right, get as much data as you can. It's actually even easier if it's local, because we do this farming already, don't we? I mean, most of us farm, right? So go to RedX. If you want to go crazy, go to RedX, extrapolate all that data, throw it onto Facebook, and then do some dynamic ads for real estate. And you'll retarget everybody on Facebook and Instagram. Ask them to join a community or start a podcast, or what Justin's done, start a show that's local, interview the local people, or do whatever you want. And then they'll be like, whoa, this is cool. I'm getting to know people that started this business locally. I've always wanted to know about that. And then all of a sudden you're giving value and driving people back in there. And yeah, they'll give you their email or their phone number to be able to get to what they want to see, right? So you just have to think of it as a brand, and where am I heading as a brand?
And I love that. I'm a follower of Russell Brunson, his newest book, Traffic Secrets. He talks about how these big platforms can change really quickly, and it behooves you to build your own list. And I've oftentimes thought of it as, being a renter. Obviously, in real estate, we're all aware of kind of the perils of renting, right? Obviously, there's some times where it makes sense, but I think when we're building communities on these other platforms, at any moment they can change and say, hey. And Google's classic for this, right? They'll kind of do what's called the Google slap in a hurry, and all of a sudden they're not offering that product anymore. And you've built an entire amazing community on Google Plus, and now what, right? And Facebook could do the same thing. I don't see them doing it, but how wise of what you just said of like make it to where it's no longer the community doesn't only exist on rented land, but on land you own, right? Your own list, your own database, to where you can add value, like you said, through other means as well, to where it's through, an email newsletter. I saw on your profile that people can text you, right? I would imagine that that's kind of through community, and a great way for people to stay in contact with you. And it's brilliant. I think if there's one thing that everyone takes away here today, is that if you want to learn how to build community, stay close to Tristan Ahumada. He's not only done it once, right? With again, the biggest online real estate presence out there, community out there, but now he's teaching other industries how to do it. So I see you as being kind of very pivotal in helping kind of help people move forward in building their own community. So it's awesome stuff, man.
Yeah, dude. Thanks, man.
Yeah, no, I mean that. Let's go ahead and jump to the signature question, Tristan. You're a big thinker. That's why you're on the Think Bigger Real Estate Show here today. Tell us, what do you do to continue to be a big thinker, to continue to expand your possibilities? What does that look like? Yeah,
I think it's a great question, dude. The thing that I continually do is two things. One, I continually surround myself with people that are doing things differently than I am, not necessarily just better or how I envision better to be, but just differently, because I find that the more people that I talk to, the more meetings that I take that I don't want to take, but I take, and I listen and I'm like, whoa, what did they just say? That's really cool. Right. And then that little one thing can change something dramatically of what I'm doing. The ability for you to take both sides when you're listening to people and come from a point of, hey, I don't know what I'm doing, or I may not know what this person knows. Let's just listen and shut up. I think that goes a long way, because I hear a lot of people saying, no, I'm not going to take another call. Oh, I'm just too busy for this. Well, I'm the opposite. And I'm like, I don't say no very often, right? I let my assistants say no, which is great, but I don't say no very often. And I just try to go to as many appointments and meetings as possible, because that's become my job now, right? Building this community, building relationships, growing that, and staying at the point of being able to notice when things shift so that I can shift quickly enough when it comes to communities, right? Because now we've built this multi-million-dollar company, and I'd like to continue to push it forward, right? And I'd like to continue for it to grow as things shift. And the only way to do that is to continually talk to people that are doing things differently. Mm-hmm. So I think it goes a long way. That's number one. And it's the people that I'm always talking to and surrounding myself with. And number two is really reading a lot and listening to podcasts, listening to just things that I want to learn. And I topic stack a lot. So if I want to learn something, I Google, let's say, the top 5 books in that specific topic, and I make sure that those are the 5 that I want to read, and I go all in on those 5. And then this way, when I'm learning, I'm reading one, I finish, I learn another one, I'm like, oh, that's similar. There are some similarities here. Then I go to the next one, I'm like, oh, yeah, it's being re-ingrained into me after book 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5. I'm like, it makes sense. I understand this fully. Let's do this. So those are the things that I would say, man. That's
awesome stuff. I think if you're going to build a community, you've got to be chief listener, right? Chief listening officer. Like, your job is to go take meetings and listen to people. It's a great lesson for all of us. And I think it's insulation against being disrupted. If you can always be learning, even from people that, as you mentioned, sometimes they're unexpected people, right? You're like, boy, I didn't expect that to go so well, for me to learn so much from that. And then I love your strategy on learning, right? Sometimes we just learn whatever comes at us. A book was recommended. Oh, a podcast was recommended. And it's like, we're all over the place. But if we really say, what do I need to learn? I know you're a luxury agent with KW. What's the one thing that you can learn, such that by learning it makes everything else irrelevant or easier, right? Like, that would be the thing to learn. And I love how you've really taken that principle and applied it to really focus in on the things that will help you get to the next level and your community get to the next level. So, Tristan, such a pleasure. I want to thank you so much for your time, for your contribution, not just here, right? This has been special for me, but just to the community. I mean, you give a lot, right? And lead a lot. So on behalf of all of the Lab Coat Agent fans out there, I want to say thank you. I know it takes a lot, and you've sacrificed a lot to create what you've created. So thank you for that.
Thanks,
thank you for coming here and expanding our possibilities, expanding what's kind of our own thinking, helping us to be bigger thinkers. So
I love your show, bro.
Thanks, man. Total pleasure spending some time with you. And my final request of everybody listening here today, they're 3 simple words. You know what they are, and they are: go, think, bigger. Thanks for helping us do that today, Tristan.
Thanks, man.